Welcome back to I Left America, the podcast that inspires us to be brave and venture beyond. I spent the last 3 episodes talking about myself, how I moved to New Zealand, why I did it, and most of all, how much I enjoy being here. But don't take my word for it. I'm interviewing other Americans who've left America and moved overseas to find out what their experiences are like. Today we're talking to Selena Segar. Selena and I used to work together when I first moved to New Zealand. We had a lot in common. We had an architecture background, we were both from New York State, and we were both, at one point, cheerleaders. Yes, that's right. In university, I was a cheerleader. Selena recently started her own architecture firm called Agents of Architecture, but that's not what brought her to New Zealand originally. She first came as a cheerleading coach. Let's hear that story. Hi, Selena. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Seth. Thank you.
How long have you lived here? Or in New Zealand in general?
In New Zealand for 18 years now.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So you graduated from university in Vermont. Where are you from originally in the U.S.?
So New York was where I was born until I went away to school, which I went to Vermont for. And that was upstate New York that I'm from.
Had you lived in any other countries before coming to New Zealand, or had you traveled extensively?
No, did some small travel with family, but not much. Did a little bit in university, going overseas to Italy for a school trip, that sort of thing. But I wouldn't say extensively, and definitely haven't lived anywhere else.
So in that sense, coming to New Zealand would have been a pretty big change.
It was a big step, yes.
What was the reason you moved to New Zealand?
So after graduating with my master's, I was a little bit burnt out and said, okay, well, I want to have some time to do some travel before getting into my career. And so that's where I made the decision to look at other countries to travel to. And I made applications to several different countries that were offering positions as a cheerleading coach, because I had done cheerleading extensively and had been coaching for a long time. So I thought, well, that's something I could do and just go have some fun for a little while before really, pushing into my career. And I had offers from a couple different countries, but New Zealand gave a really good package. And so that made it an easy choice. It was only meant to be a year. And I then decided that I loved it so much that I was going to stay.
That is a unique entry point to any country.
Yes.
What were some of the other countries that you'd considered?
Austria. There was also other areas in the US that I had looked at, and Australia.
What made you pick New Zealand aside from the package?
It was the package because they offered a place to live, a job, and a vehicle. So it sounded like a really good deal. So that was essentially what gave me the boost to come over.
That's really interesting. A lot of people expect they have to come over on one of the jobs on the green list where the high jobs in demand, like construction or teachers or doctors and such. So it's interesting that you mentioned coming over as a as a cheerleader coach. I'd actually talked to someone on the plane last year who'd come over as a basketball coach as well. So that's a really interesting way to get into another country I hadn't thought of. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, anything where sport is not, I guess, native to that country. So obviously cheerleading is really big in the US. It wasn't so big in New Zealand at the time. And so the people that brought me over had many coaches that they were bringing over to try and build up the expertise of cheerleading in New Zealand.
Wow. So what did people think around you, your parents, your family, your friends, when you said you were going to go to New Zealand to coach cheerleading?
So my parents did not have a clue as to what New Zealand was, where it was. My mom even asked me, do they live in huts? So very unsure of, what sort of place I was going. So my family in particular had a lot of questions, making sure, I'm not going someplace unsafe. And so there was a lot of convincing of them, being that I was still young, obviously an adult, but, parents as they are will worry. A lot of my friends were excited or jealous, of the opportunity. So, yeah.
And you'd already finished your master's at that point, so you did have a possibility of a career in architecture ahead of you as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
So, what was the paperwork like? What was the process like to come in? Well, actually, first question: had you actually come to visit New Zealand before you accepted the job? Was it two trips, or was it just you came here and that was it?
I literally packed a really large duffel bag of all the things that I could think of that I absolutely needed, and moved country.
Wow. Wow, that's fantastic. How old were you at that time?
I would have been 23, I think.
Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. So, what was the process like at that time?
I was lucky that the people that I was coming over to work for, they had handled a lot of the paperwork side. So they applied for my visa to come over, and that was an application, as you said, on that green list of, basically saying that there aren't people with these expertise in New Zealand, and therefore that's why I was coming for a work visa. But then I did end up marrying a Kiwi, and so then I looked at getting more of a permanent residency, which was interesting because you had to prove that you were actually in a relationship, and so there was a little bit of paperwork on that side. But I guess for every individual person, it would depend on their circumstances of why they're coming here, whether it's for work or if they're looking to retire here. So might have different circumstances for each person.
So how long did you coach cheerleading, and what was the reason you transitioned out of it?
I coached cheerleading in New Zealand at least 10 years. I ended up starting my own gym here, and that was really great. Really enjoyed that. But then when I started to have kids and I had also my architecture career at that point, and it was a balance of family, work that's going to earn me a lot, more money than cheerleading. Cheerleading was obviously more of a hobby. So I did give up that coaching aspect, but I stayed in doing judging, choreography, traveled around New Zealand, working with different clubs. I was the chairperson of the New Zealand Cheer Union, and I'm still involved in that. I do coach credentialing, not only for New Zealand, but for the globe, so any English-speaking countries. So I'm still involved, but a lot less, as I just can't manage that balance of, constantly doing everything, and want to put more focus to my business.
So you had some point were doing architecture and cheerleading coaching at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So what was the difference between the pathway in architecture in the US versus the pathway in New Zealand?
Right. So there are different pathways. So because I came over after graduating and having my degree, I came here and looked at, okay, well, how can my degree transfer to New Zealand? I did have to take one course, which was New Zealand land laws, so that I understood, the land laws here in New Zealand and how that applied, which made perfect sense to do. And that was only, I would say, a semester course. It wasn't long at all. So it wasn't like I had to do more years of study or anything. And so then they transferred my degree. So they accepted that degree, which was great. And in New Zealand, there's multiple different pathways of registration. So you can become a registered architect, or you can become a licensed building practitioner. And depending on what level you're at, means what you can work on. So I'm a licensed building practitioner design 3, and so that's equivalent to an architect. So there is no real reason to go for one or the other because they're equivalent, besides the fact that it was easier for me in juggling family and work at the same time. So that route was a little bit easier to achieve. But someone coming over as a registered architect already in the US, that process can be very simple. It's just transfer to New Zealand, and they just essentially want to know that you're still active, in good standing, that sort of thing in the US. And then all of those credentials can be transferred over, and you can be a registered architect in New Zealand.
You mentioned that you've started 2 businesses, and you've recently started this new agency of architecture, Agents of Architecture, and then previously you'd also started your own gym for the cheerleading. How did you find starting a business in New Zealand? Was it easy, or did you find hurdles?
I don't know that it would be much different than, say, the US. With cheerleading being a sport, there's a lot less that you need to set up. So it's obviously setting up the name of the company, those sorts of things are important, doing a trademark. So I did all the same for Agents of Architecture as well. But being that we have higher liability in architecture, there's a little bit more to it. So we did have lawyers involved in drawing up, paperwork in the background, so that everything is done correctly. But I would imagine that would be very similar to if you were setting it up in the US.
So are you a New Zealand citizen now?
I am. I did get my New Zealand citizenship. I want to say that was in 2015. I went for that. And I think it was right around, there were some hiccups of expats being told that they might have to leave or something like that. And so I kind of went, I've got a family here, I've got a business, I don't want to be thrown out the door, as they say. So, so that's why I went for it. There ended up being no real threat, but I think it was a nice push for me to do it anyways. And just have that comfort. And so I do now have dual citizenship. So I still have my New Zealand citizenship and my US citizenship. And my children also have birth abroad certificates. So if they were ever to want to go to the US, they are considered citizens as well, of both countries.
And your husband's a Kiwi?
Yeah.
What's interesting is you didn't need your citizenship in order to vote in the elections here, and you didn't need your citizenship in order to start companies here. So yeah. I find that very freeing.
Yeah, definitely.
What are some of the cultural differences that you had to work around when you came here, or that you've seen over the years?
I remember when I first got here, it was words that are used differently. I actually had started a book of this word means this. And it's just, essentially, if you were to even move across the US, you'd probably have, different words for different things. So that wasn't a huge change. English is, the main language here in New Zealand. So it wasn't about learning a new language, though we do have Te Reo Māori, which I have been working a little bit on. Wouldn't say I'm good at all, but so the language was really easy for me, and a relaxed lifestyle. in New Zealand, which I think was a nice difference. And, there might be areas like that in the US as well. But where I came from, New York is busy. There's lots of activity. It's always hype. There was, a lot more crime as well. Whereas here in New Zealand, I feel quite safe. I actually remember one of the first times calling home and saying that the national news was about a dog that ran across an intersection and everybody had to stop. So it was like, that was
New
the
Zealand national news. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously times have changed over the last, 18 years, and there have been, things that have, crime that's not great. I look at New Zealand being a place where I feel very comfortable raising my children. Whereas I think in the US, I don't think I could do that. Sounds scary, some of the things that a lot of my friends have to go through with their kids, with all the school shootings and things that have happened there.
Yeah, that's really something. Well, and so New Zealand is supposed to be one of the safest countries in the world, and you definitely feel that when you're living here?
Yeah, 100%.
What are some of the things that you miss about America? Something that you thought maybe it does well that New Zealand could do better, or that it is nice to do when you go home?
The main thing I miss from home is my family. So obviously I came here alone, and all of my family still live there, spread out across the US. So visiting home actually is difficult, because I need to visit multiple places. But there's nothing in the US that I feel like I couldn't live without in New Zealand.
So you have New Zealand citizenship. Do you have any plans to move back to the US at some point, or is this home now?
This is definitely home. I don't have any plans to move back. I have talked to the kids as they're starting to get older. If they want to go to school in the US, that sort of thing, there's that possibility. But I don't see us moving back.
What's probably the one thing or the several things that you love most about New Zealand?
The beach. Definitely the beach. We live on a peninsula, and there are 7 remote beaches, not crowded with people, that I can go to at any time within 10 minutes. Wow. So, that is amazing, having that accessibility. We can go from the East Coast to the West Coast, having different experiences of the ocean as well. And I really quite enjoy that. And definitely it being safe, that to me is a really crucial thing.
I know a lot of Americans right now are looking at moving overseas, probably more than at any other time in the last 100 years. Would you encourage them to look at New Zealand especially?
Yes. I absolutely love New Zealand, as I've said. And as I said, it's safe, it's beautiful, there's lots of opportunity, it's continuously growing, so there's lots of growth happening here. Yeah, I would say most definitely.
That's great. Well, that's fantastic news. And I'm so glad that you found a home here and that your family is safe and you've got a fantastic career and you've still got your cheerleading hobby. That's just wonderful. It's such a good story. Well, thank you so much.
If I could, I would convince my family to move over, and I have tried.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I hope so. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you.
So what are you waiting for?
If you're thinking seriously about leaving America, especially if you want to move to New Zealand, check out our sponsor, vbi.nz. That's NZ to us Americans. You can book an appointment with someone who can answer your questions about immigration and help you understand your strengths moving overseas. The link is in the show notes below. Please subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. Are you planning to leave America? What are your reasons? And where would you go? See you soon, or as we say in New Zealand, see you out there.